guys, my name is Brandon from Gearist.com. Today we're going to be breaking down the Zoom Terra Kiger 3 from Nike. Now, you know, when the Kiger series first came out a few years ago, this was one of the first shoes that we'd reviewed, I think, pretty much ever at Gearist.com. And so it was really one of those things I approached with a lot of trepidation. I was like, well, is it going to be legit? You know, we'd tried a lot of other trail shoes at that point and things like that. And so getting into this was a little bit skeptical, to be very honest. But I was pleasantly surprised. And so I was really eager to get my foot into the third iteration of the shoe, having not run in the second, to see what it was all about. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about, as always, is going to be the outsole of the shoe. Now, from version 1 to version 2 of this shoe, both of which you can see right here, the outsole really didn't change, like at all. It didn't change. And this is the first update that the shoe has really ever seen. From version 1 to version 2, it was probably more of a kind of if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of mentality, but there were some durability issues with the lugs and things like that. Now in version 3, Nike has bumped, number 1, the material. This is 054 super high abrasion rubber. Particularly on this shoe where that takes place is this black area that you see right here. That is the 054 super high abrasion rubber. This in the middle here is 004 sticky rubber. Now, one of the things that's interesting to me is that when you run and you go through the gait cycle, weight tends to start here on the lateral heel, the outside heel, and go forward toward that big toe. To me, it would make a lot of sense to put one of the kind of high abrasion areas right up here. So I'm not sure exactly why they chose this, but in any event, it's definitely a bump in durability for this shoe. As far as the layout goes, this was also a huge change for this shoe. In the version 1 of the shoe, which you can see right here, and version 2, you can see that it's laid out in blocks of 3. Now in this version of the shoe, they've gone for effectively blocks of 4 here. And the lugs have doubled in depth, where in those they were roughly 2mm deep lugs. These have doubled to 4mm, or about 4mm, depending on manufacturing tolerances, to be a much more beefy, much more sticky, kind of get down in there lug. Another one of the changes to the lug system that I really like is that around this area, kind of this rounded area of the outsole here, on those previous versions, it was kind of these like really obtuse angled polygons. So it wasn't really going to hold the ground that well. These on this hand have really been squared off. It's a much sharper angle, something that's really going to get into the nitty gritty of the dirt and hold on a lot better. This is going to be really key during descents in any sort of technical terrain like that. For me, in version 1, the lug system really wasn't a big deal on really kind of groomed trails, buffed out stuff, and fire roads and paths and things like that, and even some more technical trails, but not super technical. In this case, apart from the durability of the rubber, but also the layout of the lug pattern, as well as the lug setup itself, the depth, it's going to be much more suited to some more kind of technical, more hardcore trails where you're really going to beat the hell out of the shoe a little bit. For me, the midsole was really one of my favorite parts of the original Zoom Terra Kiger, and in this, it's no different. This is a really smooth riding, just very comfortable feel. They really just didn't change a whole lot with it, because why should they? Zoom Air units remain pretty prominent in the heel and in the forefoot, which you're going to feel depending on where you land, how you're landing, and it actually provides a little bit of protection from the ground without decreasing the ground feel too much. Something that has been mentioned is that the outsole has more of a full coverage material all the way up, and that it might decrease the flexibility really, and I didn't really notice that. I mean, if it does, it's so marginal that it's kind of unnoticeable, especially when putting some weight to it while you're running. So it's still just a really solid part of it. One addition to the midsole that I think is a nice little kind of hidden addition is this little bead of foam that's right around here. And why is that important? It's not super important, but the reason that it stands out to me is because it's going to help shape that heel cup a little bit more. This is just a little bit of cosmetic foam that comes up over the edge. The foot actually sits below that inside the shoe, but that's going to help to really well define that heel cup in the rear of the shoe to give it a more custom and comfortable feel. The upper on the original Zoom Terra Kiger is one of the things that I really loved about it. Always had a really nice, very slipper-like feel, and in this model, what they've gone and done is used Flymesh, which is an engineered mesh for the entirety of the upper instead of trading out meshes depending on the place in the shoe. Now, what Flymesh allows them to do is it's effectively a single layer mesh or a dual layer mesh that acts as a single layer mesh. So when they want to carve a channel in it, as they've done here with the fly wire stitches, what they were able to do is they don't have to have stitches on the side of that, thus adding more weight and more seams on the inside. This is a really, really great way to build a shoe because it effectively allows it to be this engineered mesh that is all one piece. If you're familiar with the previous two versions of this shoe, you will definitely notice that this is a much more substantial feeling mesh. It's not a huge deal, and it certainly breathes very well, though sometimes not as well as the original. As for the support structure on the upper, you can see these bonded and welded overlays right here. Those are going to be really, really nice in terms of really defining the structure of the shoe. The actual strapping and things like that, you'll notice that there really kind of isn't any, but these thicker gray sections right here, those aren't straps. That's where the mesh, the Flymesh that is used in this shoe, is a little thicker, and that's what makes it engineered. This bonded TPU material shows up here in the toe bumper, feeling for me, nice little toe bumper. Not super rigid, but it's enough to kind of protect your foot. And then back here in the heel counter, which is a change for this shoe, because in previous versions, this shoe didn't really have a heel counter per se. It was very, very loose, and in this one, it's still very supple and everything, but it's more defined, and it's more defined by an internal structure as well as these bands of that TPU overlay that you can see right there. Two more carryovers in this upper from previous versions is number one, the burrito tongue, which you can see right there. Basically comes up the medial side and wraps over, so the tongue effectively is a single unit with the rest of the upper. And the second thing is the fly wire. These wires that you can see right here, these cords rather, where the laces go through. They're not really eyelets per se, but what they do is they allow underneath the midsole to really hug that foot like that. It's a really, really slick way to really tie down that foot nicely. Now let's talk about fit. For me, there really isn't a whole lot of change from this to previous models. However, if you hold this up to a previous model, kind of front to back just like that, or side to side, top to bottom, whatever, there's about a 5mm width gain in this. Now that's going to come in with changing the weight a little bit. Whereas version 1 of the shoe came in at 9.3 ounces, this guy comes in at 10.4 ounces. It doesn't really feel heavy to me because, again, that burrito-like feel, that slipper fit, I feel very, very comfortable in that. It fits very close to the foot, and that's something that I can appreciate, and doesn't make it feel sloppy or heavy or anything like that. So while there is a weight gain, I'd like to see that go away a little bit. I also think that it's really acceptable in this shoe because, again, that fit is so nice to the foot. Size 11 is size 11 for me, so I can't see where, if you wear an 11 or whatever you wear in Nike, that this wouldn't fit standard sizing. Let's talk about the ride of the shoe now. For me, it's really just a great shoe. And again, I've taken this on some really gnarly, rocky trails and not had too much trouble with the fact that there is no rock plate. That's not a big deal. There hasn't been a rock plate in shoes like this in the past. They saved that for the Wild Horse, which we're going to talk about soon. But in this version of this shoe, it's just a nice, nimble shoe. I think that a little bit of additional material in the outsole is going to add some pop to it. It's got nice response on trail, fantastic ground feel. Now, I've had this up to 9 miles with absolutely no problems, and again, that was on some really, really just terrible trails. This did a really good job for me. On some of the rockier stuff, you can certainly feel it poking a little bit. It's not a huge deal. Again, that Zoom air pocket right under here is going to do okay in terms of replacing a rock plate. It's not a substitution for a rock plate, but it does do a good job of standing in. This is a good shoe, and I would say that it could easily go to the ultra distance. It really depends on your style of running, how much you really kind of hammer the ground and things like that. I have heard mentioned that it's not super great with drainage. I don't really know because I haven't run it. We live here in Colorado, and there's thunderstorms overhead right now. It's something that I just haven't experienced a lot of drainage needs. But the point is, I think that this is a shoe based on the durometer, the feel, the ride, and all that kind of stuff. This is going to be a really nice shoe that's going to be able to take you a pretty good distance. At $125, this is not exactly the cheapest trail shoe in the world, but it does fall right in line with the majority of its peers. So I wouldn't really worry too much about it. If it's something that you want to try, definitely do that. As I mentioned at the outset of this review, when we first got our hands on the initial Zoom Terra Kiger, I was really skeptical. At that time, I found myself really pleasantly surprised, and that has not changed. I really, really like it a lot. It's a great shoe with a fantastic feel. Again, that upper fit, just wrapping around with the burrito tongue, is something that you really got to try on to really feel. This is definitely a solid trail shoe that I'm going to put a ton more miles on. Currently, it's got about 40 miles on it. The durability, I've noticed, especially on this part, is just spectacular. It has been cleaned off to show you guys. This part, there's a little bit of pitting, but at 40 miles, it's not a huge deal. There are places where you would expect the rubber to kind of, well, give way to sharp rocks and things like that. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say about it, because a lot of people just go, Nike, oh, they don't make trail shoes. But listen, If you've not tried it, it's definitely something that you should check out. If you're interested in shopping for the shoe, you can do so by clicking the links down in the description or go to Gearist.com right here and check out the original review of this. Now, my question for you guys today is, have you tried any Nike trail running shoes? Let us know in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for taking a few minutes to spend with us today. If you've got any questions at all, don't hesitate to let us know by emailing info@gearist.com or reaching out to us on one of our social media outlets, which you can see right there. You got Strava, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Down there at the bottom, of course, is subscribe to this YouTube channel, which we really need you to do. You guys supporting this channel, sharing with your friends, going to those buy links and buying shoes and helmets and skis and whatever through those links really helps to support Gearist. So if you're someone who's done that, thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it. Again, thank you guys so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.